It's not what they look like that we should be focusing on. It's how everyone behaves, what their actions define their character. Their character is ideally one we would like to know more about.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. It's that time of week where we talk about the top 5 something. A couple of weeks ago, we had Doc in to talk about the top 5 X-Men controversies, and he's back this week with the top 5 X-Men stories. How you doing, Doc?
Honestly, I'm doing excellent this morning.
If you're watching at home and you think Doc's full of shit, you're probably right. Or if you have a different opinion than his, make sure you jump in the comment section and let us know what you think, and we'll definitely get back with you, because this is the stuff we live for. We love talking top 5. We love talking the best of the best. All right, Doc, what's your number 5 X-Men story?
It's what they call the Messiah Trilogy. And it was actually 3 stories that were all kind of what they were like, almost different chapters in, the 3 chapters of trying to fix the problem that started after House of M, way back with the No More Mutants thing. Because, that kind of stuck around for a long time. They were constantly trying to, Beast was obsessing over trying to find a solution to it. There were no more mutants being born. X-Men were dying, and the mutant population was shrinking. There was 198 of them, and it was no longer a breeding population. So they were trying to figure out how to restart, I guess, the mutant race. And then they started with a little prelude that was called Endangered Species. And Endangered Species was basically just a one-shot, and then a couple of it had have some 8-page backup stories in a bunch of the X titles. But then it got into the real story, which was Messiah Complex, which involved baby Hope being born up in Alaska, and the Marauders. It was basically a race to the baby. The Marauders were trying to capture her. It's a baby. You're not really capturing, I guess, because it's not running away. But they were trying to get her. I can't remember if it was. I think it was the Church of Humanity, whatever the hell Stryker's church is that I always forget the name of, and the X-Men, all trying to get her, because she was the first mutant born after M-Day, and it was a big deal to whoever got her. And then the second part of it was Messiah War, which was mostly in the Cable book and the X-Force book, and it's kind of set in the future, like way in the future, where, because the Cable book after this was Cable running around through time away, with baby Hope, trying to outrun Bishop that was trying to kill her. And this is when Bishop kind of became a bad guy. And then it had to do with, Apocalypse and Strife and Cable and the future and Hope and X-Force, and ending up kind of all getting shot forward in time to fight a war. And then the final part was Second Coming, where it had, kind of the current teen-ish Hope. It was a really good story. It led towards the Utopia and Nation X and Necrotia storylines. It was kind of like the restart of the full restart of the mutant race as a viable race, and no longer just a kind of a weird offshoot. They became that kind of next step of humanity again for the first time since House of M.
Always trying to fix Brian Michael Bendis' mistakes, right?
Exactly. He leaves so many in his wake that somebody's got to come in and pick up his crap.
All right, Doc, what's your number 4 X-Men story?
Age of Apocalypse. That whole event, I think it was 1995. Legion goes back in time to kill Magneto, and because he wants to give his dad the opportunity to make his dream come true unopposed by Magneto, because he feels like Magneto has been the one that stood in the way of Xavier's dream coming true for the whole time. And he goes back into the past to kill Magneto, and he accidentally kills his dad. So now Xavier dies in the past. Bishop is stuck there. He ends up kind of having to get back to the present the long way around. And then it jumps to the present. Instead of, Magneto kind of feeling like Xavier, with Xavier sacrificing himself for Magneto and kind of basically taking the bullet for him when Legion tried to kill him, because Xavier jumped in front of it. And Magneto felt like he owed Charles his life. And instead of kind of following his own dream, adopted Xavier's dream. The only problem is his heart was never really 100% in it the way that Xavier's was. So he kind of failed. So Magneto starts the X-Men instead of Xavier. And instead of Magneto attacking Cape Citadel in what would have ostensibly been X-Men 1, it was Apocalypse with his 4 horsemen. The X-Men kind of lose. So it becomes this it jumps forward to like this dystopian current time where the X-Men are kind of on the run and they're freedom fighters, but Apocalypse has taken over the entire world. There's a mutant council or a human council that still exists in London. But for the most part, almost all of the humans are dead. There's rare humans here and there, and then Bishop, being the one that, kind of had to take the long way around from the 50s or 60s in Israel to the present. He's kind of more of an old man at this point, but he remembers the old present, because he was from the present, went to the past, and then took the long way around. So he wasn't affected the way everybody else was. So he remembers it, and he tells everybody that we could create a better world, and they figure out this plan to go get the M'Kron crystal from the Shi'ar. The Summers brothers are working for Sinister because they never got Scott never got adopted by Xavier. Wolverine and Jean are together. Wolverine's still going by Weapon X. He has only one hand. He doesn't, it's weird. But it's a great series. And the whole point of it was at the end to try to reset reality. And they did a great job of it. It's still considered one of the better X events of all time.
What's your number 3 X-Men story?
Extinction Agenda. It was kind of a culmination of about 50 or 60 issues of X-Men, of Uncanny X-Men that was going on in the background, as well as X-Force. And then they just kind of tagged in the New Mutants. It was where we finally get a peek, a real look inside Genosha, and Cameron Hodge, who had been when the original X Factor started, he was their lawyer. And then it turns out he was running an anti-mutant, hate group under the cover of X Factor as well. And, I think it was Archangel basically had just cut his head off. He literally just slashed his head off with his claw or with his wings. And you thought he was dead. Well, it turns out his head had got stuck on this giant kind of robot scorpion android body, and he was now running Genosha. And it had to do with, because the Genoshan economy was essentially run on mutant slave labor. And it was kind of I guess it was kind of a Claremont's commentary on apartheid in South Africa at the time, because this is the 80s, there's still apartheid. The X-Men end up getting kidnapped by the Genosian magistrates. This is shortly after the X-Men had all gone through the Siege Perilous. So Wolverine is still running around with Jubilee because he's the one that didn't go through. They meet up with Psylocke, who they just kind of broken her mind control for being the Lady Mandarin and the assassin for the hand, right after she got put into that Asian body. But X-Factor and a bunch of the New Mutants kids got kidnapped by Genosian magistrates. Storm, Banshee, and Cable and Forge decide they're going to basically storm a country and get the kids back. And Cyclops as well. And then you find out that Havoc, after he went through the Siege Perilous, he ended up in Genosha and was a Genosian magistrate now. He was running the magistrates. He's actually the one that led the assault on Xavier's. He doesn't even remember who he is. And it was basically about breaking down this kind of slave labor culture. And then, that's how we ended up with the Genosha. A couple of years later, Magneto was given to run. But yeah, that was when, it was a great series. Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, and John Bogdavone with Claremont and Louise Simonson doing all the scripting and the story. Great story. It was one of my favorite things.
Man, it's going to be hard to beat a creative team like that. You're talking about an all-star team, a couple of people that could be on the Mount Rushmore of comic books. What's your number 2 X-Men story?
Fall of the Mutants. Honestly, it was this amazing story. It happened. It wasn't really a crossover. It was an event across Uncanny X-Men, X-Factor, and New Mutants, but they didn't actually cross over with each other. However, they were all doing something different. Fall of the Mutants is, the big story in it. The X-Men, essentially, they die in Dallas and the whole world sees them die, and they kind of become heroes as a result. In the process, they, there was 9 members of the team, 8 X-Men plus Madeline Pryor, Storm, Wolverine. And see, now this set up kind of a lot of really cool stuff and a lot of stuff that's been forgotten. For instance, all 8 of them, and 9 if you include Madeline, should still to this day be invisible to all forms of electronic surveillance, because that was part of the deal that they got. They all sacrificed themselves to defeat the adversary and free Roma, who was this, goddess that the adversary had kind of bound. When she gets free, they had defeated the adversary. So basically, in thanks to them, she brings them back to life. And she brings them back to life while deciding to give them 2 gifts. One, all records of the X-Men, all digital records, are wiped clean, so nobody knows anything except for what's literally in their brain or that they write with a pencil. But if you type it into a computer, it will self-delete, as well as electronic surveillance. So you could be seen visually, but nobody can get photos of you or video of you. It looks like they're, if somebody's talking to you on camera, it looks like they're just talking to an empty space. And it gave the X-Men an opportunity that leads into my number 1, which was to essentially strike at their enemies from whenever they want.
All right, Doc, you got me. I'm champing at the bit. So what's your number 1 X-Men story then?
Okay, everybody's going to yell at me because the Phoenix Saga is not on this list, but I wanted to leave it off specifically because everybody calls the Phoenix Saga the best. It is, but for this list, I wanted to skip it because everybody puts it at number 1. My favorite story.
Left off the best X-Men story just so you didn't want to be cliche.
Yes. I'm not going to be a cliche. Everybody makes, come on. Fine, I'll put it. You know what?
No, it's already done. You've already said screw it.
Yeah.
What's your number one story?
The entire Outback era. The entire Outback era of the X-Men. They're now essentially dead in the eyes of the world. They're unable to be surveilled. So even if they got caught on camera, nobody can prove it. And it allows them to strike completely freely at all of their enemies. It allows them, it was the first time the X-Men had an opportunity to really go proactive. And I feel like a lot of X-writers today, they've tried this, with X-Force. They've tried it with, currently with House of X, Dawn of X after House of X and Powers of X. They tried it with when Fraction moved them to San Francisco. They've tried this a dozen times and nobody's able to do it, moving the X-Men out of Westchester and making them a proactive organization. Instead of just going out and trying to save some mutants, they're actually going out and trying to take out their enemies so that there's not evil mutants out there. So there's not hate groups out there. They actually became a proactive organization. The thing was, it almost ended up killing them to the point where taking out the Reavers, they had taken out a couple other groups. The Reavers came back while the X-Men, and it ends like the whole thing ends with the Reavers coming back while the X-Men are on a mission, and they hit they come back through, like Gateway brings them back, and they bring him back. He brings them back, and Psylocke just can see the fact that the entire town that they had been living in has been overrun with Reavers again. And the Reavers are waiting for them. And she kind of reads everybody's mind and can tell what their response would be, which was basically, we're going to go in and we're going to fight. And she's like, if we do this, we're dead. She knows what's going to happen. She literally it was the first time I've ever seen her, like, it was kind of jarring at the end. You're sitting there going, she's changing their mind. She's just like, why are these characters acting so out of character? She's pushing them to all walk through the Siege Perilous. And the Siege Perilous was the second gift that Roma gave the X-Men, which was a chance at, if you go through it, you'll have no memories, you'll have no history, and it will put you where you're supposed to be, where you should be, without you making stupid choices that prevent you from ending up there. The whole thing was that whole era of them living entirely off the grid in this little mining town in the middle of the outback and being free to strike out at their enemies. It lasted for about 30 issues, I'd say. It was excellent.
All right, Doc. Thank you very much for running down the top 5 X-Men stories of all time. If you agree with Doc, let us know in the comments. If you disagree with him, let him know he's totally wrong. I think he took the coward's way out with the Dark Phoenix saga, but it's too late for that now, Doc. You didn't want to throw it in there. You can't take it back. Thanks so much for joining me, buddy.
All right, man.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.